Assassination Nation. Which is
Assassination
Nation.
Okay.
Assassination Nation is a good title. You remember I talked a while ago, don't say no automatically. You remember I talked a while ago about a movie called Unfriended, which was a horror movie that played out on social media. And I said it was very good at tapping into the way in which social media drags people in. And all these teenagers, this stuff is happening through a curse, but they can't turn their laptops off. Mm-hmm. You remember that?
I do remember that.
Great. Okay. So Assassination Nation kind of, although it's a very different film, sort of picks up the baton from that in skewering the dark heart of anti-social media, as it now gets called. It's set in Salem, Massachusetts, very, very pointedly. So immediately you're thinking,
it's the Crucible.
Exactly. Immediately you're thinking The Crucible, well done. You're thinking witch hunts and, witch hunter word, which is much overused now.
He hath his goodness now. God forbid I take it from him. That's the end of it.
That's fantastic.
I did sound. I was in charge of sound, and that's the cue for the drum roll before the execution.
Wow.
Spoiler alert, but it is The Crucible.
Okay. Fine. So anyway.
Sorry.
So no, well done. You never cease to amaze me with the depth of your knowledge. So anyway, group of independently spirited young women at the very beginning of this declare that they have found themselves the victims of a modern day witch hunt after a hacker accesses and leaks the dirty little secrets of the town to everybody. So suddenly everybody's search history and text messages and photos start leaking out. And there's a mayoral candidate who is, has this conservative agenda, is suddenly revealed to have this whole private life, which is completely against that. And then there's a school principal who seems to be an upstanding character. And the next thing is he's being pilloried because people have discovered stuff about him because of his electronic profile. And of course, this breakdown of privacy provokes different reactions to people of different ages. Here's a clip.
I mean, there's two types of people in this world, Like the people that have come to terms with privacy is just dead. And then there's the old people that are still trying to fight it.
I guess.
I mean, the internet is amazing. Like this guy in Minnesota, he's 42, whatever. But basically, he subscribed to my Amazon wish list, and now legit, he just buys me all the time.
Why?
I don't know, I guess he just really likes my Insta, he likes that I'm really real and I'm cool and, I'm a free soul. It's really sad because basically 90% of people are just so sad and lonely and have such an unfulfilling life. If I'm inspiring people, and my life is so cool and people connect with me on such a level, then basically my job for the day is done.
But what's that got to do with people connect?
So you can hear from that there's this sort of scathing, bitter, dripping sort of satirical cynicism, which I think to some extent calls up things like Heathers. I mean, even to some extent Clueless, and there's a dose of The Cult in there as well. And of course, you mentioned The Crucible. And at the beginning, these central characters say, can you imagine how a town could suddenly turn into a bunch of basically vigilante killers whose anger has all been turned upon these young women who they are basically blaming for this sudden explosion of all their private secrets being out. And so the suggestion is when you scratch the dark underbelly of a town, suddenly all these things which apparently have been kept down and repressed come up, and it's tied into social media and Instagram, and the film has a very, very good way of kind of giving you a sense of being made by somebody who actually understands the data age, the electronic age, and the voices of the characters work in a way that it doesn't sound like a bunch of old people making a movie about, isn't the internet terrifying? What it sounds like is a film that's finding this kind of broiling underbelly, but from the point of view of actually understanding what it's about. And on the one hand, there's a sort of the remnants of The Purge in there, in that it's about a town going crazy and people walking around wearing horror masks on a vigilante spree. There's also some of the kind of the comic strip violence of Kick-Ass, which I always liked and I always thought was a kind of remarkably shocking film. And some of the garish visuals of something like Revenge, which I liked very much. And it begins with this deliberately provocative list of all the triggers that are going to be in the film, all these things that are going to be in the film that are going to offend you and are going to cause you problems. But it's very, very tongue-in-cheek. And I think what it manages to do is to balance, on the one hand, social exploration, broiling misogyny, the way in which an apparently civilized society has actually got all this stuff going on underneath and is willing to turn almost immediately, back to old and terrible habits. But it's also an exploitation movie. I mean, it's a movie in which it has this kind of OTT aesthetic, which I think will drive away some viewers. I think it will prove too tough for some viewers. But if you like your satire with a bit of bite, and if like me, you appreciate a film which basically kind of takes, I think, pretty well-aimed swipes at the kind of pornified patriarchal culture that appears to be falling apart at the seams, and it's a film which is gleeful in tearing those things apart. I mean, I was really quite surprised by how well it was done. And there was a moment, I mean, I didn't know anything about it beforehand other than the title. And there was a moment when I was in a screening pretty much on my own, and I turned to myself and went, wow. I literally said wow to myself.
Did you?
I did.
Out loud?
Out loud, yeah, which must have been very annoying for the couple of other people that were in the cinema. But I was just surprised at how, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a film which is over the top and will cause some offence to some people.
As another 18 certificate?
Yes, it is. Yeah. And but I thought it was inventive and playful and well done, and actually much in the same way as I felt about Unfriended. I remember going in to see Unfriended thinking I don't have particularly high hopes for this, and then being actually really surprised by how good it was.